Avery Morgan, dressed in a simple navy blazer and dark jeans, approached the executive elevator at the corner of the gleaming lobby, her presence calm but commanding, and as she reached for the panel, Liam Carter, the building's operations head, stepped forward with a sharp grin, tapping his keycard and saying, "This elevator isn't for you," his voice slicing through the quiet like a sudden gust of cold wind. The polished floors reflected the tension in the room, employees shifting nervously, whispers bubbling into murmurs, some pulling out their phones, hesitant to capture what was unfolding. Avery's eyes met Liam's, unflinching, and for a moment, the elevator lobby felt suspended in time, her calm contrasting with the rising chaos. No words left her lips, yet the air around her vibrated with authority, the weight of unspoken power pressing down on everyone present. Liam motioned toward security, his gesture sharp, almost theatrical, as if to emphasize control, yet Avery remained still, one hand resting lightly on her tablet, a silent signal to her assistant across the city to activate the building's command protocol. A subtle flicker of lights and the soft hum of machinery signaled the protocol had begun, unnoticed by those fixated on her. Yet Avery felt it ripple through the infrastructure, the hum beneath the lobby floor a quiet reminder of the leverage she held. A resident standing near the elevators whispered to a colleague, "What's happening?" While another employee fumbled with their badge, eyes darting between Avery and the screens showing live access logs, the tension thick enough to taste. Avery's gaze swept the room, calm, assessing, and with a deliberate tilt of her head, she invited Liam to continue, as if daring him to test the limits of her patience. The murmurs grew, phones were raised cautiously, and a sense of anticipation electrified the air. People sensed that something far greater than a simple access dispute was about to unfold. The elevator doors remained closed, the hum of the building's systems barely audible over the collective inhale of the room, Avery's composed figure standing as the pivot around which the entire scene revolved. Her assistant's confirmation pinged through her earpiece, a quiet acknowledgment that the command protocol was active, and she allowed herself a slow exhale, the first movement that hinted at the controlled storm building around her. Liam's smirk faltered as he noticed the subtle changes on his tablet, indicators he couldn't interpret fully, and for the first time, doubt flickered across his expression. Avery's lips curved slightly, not a smile, but a signal that she was aware of every gaze, every assumption, every calculation being made about her, and the elevator remained closed, poised for the moment when she would reclaim not just her access but demonstrate unequivocal control, leaving everyone in the lobby to realize that the stakes were higher than they had imagined. And the quiet before the storm held the promise of a revelation that would reshape how this building perceived power and authority. Avery Morgan remained composed as the tension in the lobby thickened, her posture straight, her hands lightly resting on her tablet while her gaze swept across the employees, residents, and visitors. The hum of the building's systems under her control resonated subtly beneath the polished floors, a quiet reminder that she was not merely present, she was in command. Liam Carter moved nervously, adjusting his tie and glancing at the lobby monitors, trying to anticipate her next move, but Avery did not flinch. She simply allowed the room to observe her authority without uttering a word. The murmurs grew louder, whispers weaving through the marble and glass space, and a few residents shifted their attention from their phones to the unfolding scene, sensing the imbalance and feeling a flicker of solidarity with Avery. One of the younger employees, hesitant but curious, stepped slightly forward, a phone raised in a careful gesture, and Avery's eyes met his briefly, conveying acknowledgment but also a silent instruction to remain patient. Liam, frustrated by the lack of reaction from Avery, tried to assert control by gesturing toward the elevator panel and repeating his claim that the access was restricted, yet Avery's calm energy turned every attempt into a display of his own vulnerability. She reflected for a brief moment on the many times in her early career she had faced similar dismissals, moments when she had been underestimated because of her age, appearance, or race, and how each of those instances had been a building block for the resilience and insight she now commanded effortlessly. Across the lobby, a resident whispered to another, "Who is she really?" And Avery's steady presence transformed the space, drawing attention to the disparity between assumption and reality, expectation and truth. The assistant confirmed quietly in her earpiece that the protocol was fully engaged, and Avery shifted her weight just slightly, enough to signal that the next phase of her plan was imminent. Liam's confident demeanor wavered as he noticed subtle changes in the building's system notifications and the automatic locking of doors in certain sections, confirming that Avery's authority was already overriding his attempts at control. The employees who had initially laughed or smirked now exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that the situation had evolved far beyond a routine access dispute. Avery's calm, measured breathing and poised stance became a magnet for the collective attention, her silent command more compelling than any shout could be, and the air in the lobby became charged with anticipation. She glanced toward the elevator once more, letting her eyes linger on the polished buttons and glass panels, and the camera of a resident captured the moment, the reflection of Avery's composure and the subtle flicker of lights that signaled the operational protocol was fully in place. The room collectively exhaled, sensing that the quiet before the storm had ended, and that Avery Morgan, with the precision and patience of someone who had navigated countless obstacles, was about to reclaim not only the elevator access, but also the undeniable authority that she had cultivated through years of unwavering focus and strategic insight. Avery Morgan took a slow step back, allowing her presence to dominate the space without a single word, her eyes sweeping the lobby like a calm yet unyielding tide that drew attention and respect simultaneously. Liam Carter, realizing his earlier confidence had been an illusion, tightened his grip on the tablet in his hand, glancing at the other employees whose expressions shifted from smug amusement to cautious uncertainty as the building systems quietly confirmed Avery's control, lights flickering subtly and access logs updating with precision. A young resident, unable to contain curiosity, whispered to a companion, "She is not just a visitor, is she?" And Avery's gaze met the pair briefly, acknowledging the question with the calmest tilt of her head, a silent message that authority need not shout to command obedience. Across the lobby, security personnel hesitated, caught between protocol and the unmistakable shift in energy, while employees who had attempted to assert dominance earlier now faltered, aware that each movement and each glance was being quietly monitored and logged. Avery's mind drifted momentarily to her early days navigating corporate hallways, recalling countless moments when assumptions had been made about her appearance or demeanor, and how each slight had become a stepping stone toward understanding strategy, patience, and subtle influence. She had learned to let the environment reveal itself, to observe and measure before acting. And now those lessons were evident in every calculated stance and measured breath. The hum of machinery beneath the floors synchronized with the elevated heartbeat of the room, a rhythmic reminder that Avery was not only present but in command, orchestrating an outcome that was both inevitable and deliberate. Employees shifted uneasily as the realization dawned that the elevator panel was no longer governed by Liam's keycard, but by the broader operational protocol Avery had engaged, an invisible authority flowing through the infrastructure she had meticulously built. A visitor raised a phone, capturing the moment for posterity, while another leaned forward, curiosity and admiration mingling in a single glance, witnessing a balance of power that transcended typical corporate hierarchy. Avery's stance never wavered, yet her awareness expanded to every corner of the lobby, registering the subtle changes in posture, expression, and attention that confirmed the shift of influence. She could feel the collective anticipation, the silent question of what her next move might be, and with a slight gesture, almost imperceptible, she signaled that the building itself had acknowledged her claim. Liam, sensing the delicate yet firm reversal, attempted a final assertion, yet Avery's calm, commanding presence rendered the gesture impotent, and the lobby collectively recognized that authority was no longer a matter of assumption but of demonstrated capability. The soft click of the elevator doors engaging, synchronized with the hum of the building's systems, underscored the quiet yet absolute dominance Avery had established, and as she prepared to step forward, the audience, residents, employees, and visitors alike, held their breath, aware that the next instant would confirm not just access but the full measure of her carefully exercised power. leaving them on the edge of witnessing the unfolding resolution and the reclamation of command that had been quietly and decisively earned. Avery Morgan's presence seemed to expand beyond the confines of the lobby, her composed stance transforming the entire space into a stage where every whisper, glance, and subtle gesture carried weight. Liam Carter shifted uneasily, his confident facade cracking as he noticed employees exchanging hesitant looks and residents subtly repositioning themselves to observe more closely. Avery's eyes moved deliberately, scanning the room, absorbing every detail, every flicker of doubt, and every ounce of curiosity that her calm authority elicited. The hum of the building's systems continued, a quiet chorus that reinforced her control as lights subtly adjusted and access panels acknowledged her command without a single additional word. A junior security officer raised a hand slightly, hesitant, and Avery's gaze met his, a silent but powerful acknowledgment that spoke volumes about strategy and restraint. She allowed the moment to breathe, giving the room the time to recognize that the narrative of authority had shifted. What had once been a simple challenge to elevator access was now a demonstration of precision, patience, and unassailable control. Liam attempted to interject again, his voice echoing faintly across the polished floors, yet Avery's calm composure made his words seem inconsequential, drawing attention instead to her poised figure. Residents began quietly murmuring among themselves, some capturing the moment with their phones while others simply observed, captivated by the unfolding scene. Avery's mind lingered briefly on the countless instances where she had been underestimated in her career, recalling the subtle ways others had questioned her judgment and capability, and how each experience had honed her patience, her insight, and her understanding of the leverage in quiet authority. The assistant's confirmation pinged softly in her earpiece, the final indication that the building-wide command protocol was fully engaged, and Avery's slight shift in stance was enough to communicate readiness without a single overt gesture. Employees who had tried to assert dominance now hesitated, their movements slower, more calculated, as they realized the dynamic had irrevocably changed. The lobby itself seemed to respond, every mechanical hum and soft flicker of light underscoring the authority Avery had quietly established. A resident leaned forward, whispering to a companion, their curiosity mirrored in every eye in the room, sensing that something remarkable was occurring and that the moment held significance beyond the immediate dispute. Avery's shoulders relaxed just slightly, not from relief but from the knowledge that control had been claimed through patience and precision, and as she prepared to step toward the elevator, the collective attention of the room followed her, each individual aware that they were witnessing the careful orchestration of power, influence, and unshakable composure. Liam, finally recognizing the futility of resistance, lowered his hand, his expression a mixture of disbelief and reluctant acknowledgment, while Avery's presence commanded the space, demonstrating that authority is not demanded through noise or force, but earned through clarity, preparation, and the quiet assurance that every action taken is deliberate, measured, and backed by undeniable power. Avery Morgan's calm intensity seemed to ripple through the lobby as she lifted her chin slightly, signaling a readiness that was invisible yet undeniable, every subtle motion measured to command attention without a word. Liam Carter's gestures grew more frantic, his voice attempting to regain control, yet Avery's still presence absorbed and deflected every assertion, turning his attempts at authority into awkward theatrics that went unnoticed by the residents and employees now fully focused on her. The hum of the building's systems, imperceptible to most, provided a quiet undercurrent that confirmed Avery's activation of the command protocol, lights shifting subtly and doors responding to her control as if acknowledging her unspoken authority. Employees who had been skeptical moments before now moved cautiously, their eyes tracing every movement of Avery's poised figure, the air thick with attention that was at once anticipatory and reverent. A resident, camera in hand, whispered to a companion, "She does not even need to speak, yet we all know she is in charge." And Avery's gaze swept across the space with the precision of someone who had spent decades honing the ability to see every reaction, every subtle shift in posture or expression, translating them into understanding of influence and command. Liam attempted to interject once more, pointing at the elevator panel as if that alone could reassert control, but Avery's unwavering focus made the gesture irrelevant, her calm aura amplifying the contrast between assumed and actual power. Each resident and employee present began to intuitively recognize that the unfolding scenario was not a simple dispute over access, but a demonstration of strategy, patience, and quiet authority, and murmurs of awe and surprise passed through the room as eyes followed her poised movements. Avery allowed a moment of stillness, letting the weight of the situation settle, her mind briefly touching on early lessons in her career where silence had often been misinterpreted as weakness, only to reveal itself later as a strategic advantage, a tool of influence, and an instrument of control. The assistants. Confirmation pinged softly in her earpiece, a signal that every component of the building's systems was now fully aligned with her command, a subtle yet potent reassurance that the environment itself had been co-opted into supporting her objectives. Liam, finally realizing the extent of his own limitations, faltered visibly, his attempts at asserting authority evaporating in the presence of Avery's composed mastery, and the employees who had once tried to dominate now stood frozen, unsure how to navigate the shift in dynamics. The soft flicker of lights across the polished floors and the gentle hum of operational systems underscored Avery's quiet dominance, reinforcing to everyone in the lobby that the control she wielded was precise, deliberate, and absolute. Residents leaned slightly forward, cameras poised, capturing the unfolding command with a mixture of disbelief and admiration, while Avery's minimal gestures conveyed more authority than any vocal assertion could, the room collectively holding its breath as the momentum built, preparing for the final affirmation of her undisputed leadership and the silent, irrevocable consolidation of power that had been meticulously orchestrated from the first step she took into the space. Avery Morgan allowed a faint shift in her stance, subtle but deliberate, signaling a controlled escalation of authority that the entire lobby could sense without a single word spoken. The employees, once animated with assumptions of control, now moved cautiously, their expressions reflecting a mix of surprise and growing respect as Avery's calm presence absorbed their attempts at dominance. Liam Carter adjusted his position repeatedly, eyes flicking nervously toward the elevator panel and the operational screens, his gestures increasingly uncertain as the realization of Avery's command took root. Across the polished marble floors, the hum of the building's systems reinforced her control, a quiet, consistent reminder that every door, every elevator, and every access point was now responding to her carefully orchestrated protocol. Residents and visitors, some with phones raised and recording, leaned forward subtly, captivated by the unfolding dynamic, their curiosity amplified by the contrast between Avery's composed demeanor and the flustered energy of those who had tried to assert power over her. Avery's eyes swept over the lobby once more, absorbing every reaction, every hesitant step, and every glance, converting them into a mental map of influence and compliance that required no vocal command. She reflected briefly on the strategic patience that had brought her to this moment, the lessons learned from years of navigating underestimated positions, observing and converting subtle shifts into decisive advantage. Liam made a last attempt to reclaim authority, gesturing toward the elevator panel with urgency, yet Avery's measured composure and the subtle acknowledgment of the command protocol rendered the gesture ineffective, his actions almost theatrical in contrast to the silent precision of her control. The lobby itself seemed to lean in, the collective attention of employees, residents, and visitors focused intently on Avery, the air charged with the anticipation of her next move, yet still guided by her deliberate calm. Every flicker of light, every subtle hum from the systems, served to underscore her presence and command, signaling that the environment itself had aligned with her strategy. A young employee whispered softly to a colleague, questioning the situation aloud, while Avery's gaze shifted briefly to acknowledge the inquiry, a single nod conveying understanding and silent guidance without disrupting her overarching authority. The tension in the room held steady, the energy balanced between awe, respect, and a subtle apprehension as the audience collectively sensed the unfolding shift in control. Avery's hand hovered lightly near her tablet, a poised gesture that communicated readiness to take further action, while her assistant confirmed silently through an earpiece that all systems were synchronized and responding. The subtle confidence in her posture, the deliberate calm in her expression, and the faint but perceptible hum of operational compliance created a palpable sense of inevitability. Everyone in the lobby understood that Avery's influence was absolute, measured, and about to be demonstrated in the moments ahead, leaving the space suspended in anticipation as the scene prepared for the next decisive assertion of her quiet but undeniable authority. Avery Morgan shifted her weight slightly, just enough to draw the attention of everyone in the lobby, without speaking a single word, her presence commanding and unwavering as the subtle flicker of operational lights indicated the full activation of the building-wide protocol. Liam Carter's attempts to maintain control faltered as he noticed employees hesitating, some glancing nervously at the elevator panel, while others discreetly raised their phones to capture the unfolding scene. Avery's eyes moved deliberately across the room, registering every movement, every whispered comment, every expression of uncertainty, translating them into a precise understanding of the room's dynamics and the subtle shift in influence that now favored her. The hum of the building systems reinforced her authority, responding seamlessly to her silent commands, doors locking and panels adjusting, as if the environment itself recognized the change in command. A resident whispered to a neighbor, "She does not even need to speak, yet everyone is listening." And Avery's gaze acknowledged the observation, her calm aura intensifying the sense of inevitability in the room. Liam gestured again toward the elevator, his motions growing more frantic, but Avery's steady composure rendered the gestures meaningless, highlighting the contrast between assumed authority and actual control. Employees who had tried to assert dominance moments earlier now moved with hesitation, recognizing that the balance of power had irrevocably shifted. The lobby was alive with quiet anticipation, residents leaning forward to witness the display of strategy, patience, and calculated authority, the subtle adjustments of lights, and the soft hum of machinery amplifying the sense of Avery's control. She reflected briefly on the years she had spent being underestimated, recalling the subtle ways in which observation and patience had provided leverage and insight, transforming what had once been perceived weakness into a quiet, undeniable strength. Across the room, whispers and camera lenses captured every nuance of her stance, her gestures, her calm yet firm expression, while Liam's expression shifted from confidence to disbelief as he recognized the limits of his own influence. Avery's hand hovered lightly near her tablet, a poised and controlled movement that conveyed readiness without overt action, signaling to her assistant that the next phase of execution was prepared and confirmed. The collective attention of the room held, employees, residents, and visitors alike, all aware that Avery's silent mastery of the environment had shifted the dynamics completely, and that every moment now built toward a decisive affirmation of authority that would demonstrate the full measure of her carefully cultivated power. Each breath in the room seemed synchronized with her poised movements, the quiet anticipation holding the space in a delicate balance between awe, respect, and the subtle understanding that the resolution of this moment would reveal not just access to an elevator, but the undeniable assertion of leadership earned through strategic patience and calculated composure. Avery Morgan shifted her weight with subtle precision, her presence filling the lobby in a way that rendered the chatter of employees and residents secondary to her command. Liam Carter's gestures became more uncertain, his confident posture faltering as he realized that every move he made was being anticipated and quietly countered by the systems Avery had activated. The hum of the building's machinery, barely perceptible to most, reinforced her authority as doors clicked softly, panels adjusted automatically, and lights flickered in patterns that mirrored her calm control. Employees who had previously asserted dominance now hesitated, glancing at each other with a mix of disbelief and dawning respect, their movements cautious and deliberate as they tried to gauge the extent of Avery's influence. A resident, phone in hand, whispered to a companion, "She does not even need to speak, yet it feels like she is in charge of everything here." And Avery's gaze met theirs briefly, acknowledging the observation with a small, measured tilt of her head that conveyed understanding and unspoken authority. Liam attempted to interject once more, his voice echoing slightly across the polished marble floor, yet Avery's composed stillness absorbed and neutralized his assertions, drawing attention to the contrast between his frantic energy and her calculated calm. The lobby's atmosphere grew taut with anticipation, each resident and employee acutely aware that this was no ordinary dispute. It was a demonstration of strategy, patience, and the unshakable presence of a leader who commanded through observation and precision. Avery reflected briefly on her past experiences where similar underestimations had been made, recalling the lessons learned from being quietly underestimated and how each encounter had sharpened her ability to influence and manage without overt displays. Her hand rested lightly on the edge of her tablet, poised but relaxed, signaling readiness to her assistant and confirming the alignment of the building-wide command protocol. The subtle changes in light and the soft hum of operational systems underscored the depth of her control, making it apparent to all in the room that the environment itself had shifted in favor of her authority. Employees exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that their attempts to assert control had been anticipated and neutralized, while residents leaned in, some filming, others simply observing, all captivated by the careful orchestration of power unfolding before them. Avery's composed figure became the anchor for the lobby, every detail of posture, expression, and movement reinforcing the undeniable command she held, creating a silent but profound understanding that her authority was complete, precise, and about to be fully demonstrated in the moments that would soon follow, leaving the entire room suspended in a state of anticipation and focused attention as the scene moved toward the next decisive moment. Avery Morgan felt the subtle shift in energy as the lobby collectively focused on her, the room charged with anticipation, each resident, employee, and visitor acutely aware that something significant was about to unfold. Liam Carter's attempts at authority had grown increasingly forced, the confident demeanor he had maintained earlier now fraying at the edges as he noticed the controlled attention Avery commanded. The hum of the building systems, synchronized with her command protocol, provided a quiet, consistent reinforcement of her influence, lights adjusting subtly, doors responding seamlessly, panels updating in real time, all unnoticed by most, but reinforcing her absolute control. Avery's gaze swept the room deliberately, noting the raised phones, the hesitant movements of employees, and the slight shifts in posture from residents, interpreting every microreaction as confirmation of the silent but undeniable command she held. She allowed herself a brief reflection on past experiences where patience and observation had transformed situations that seemed powerless into opportunities for precise action, reinforcing her belief that authority earned through composure and strategy always prevailed. Liam made one last effort to assert dominance, gesturing toward the elevator with a frustrated intensity, but Avery's poised stillness and the responsive systems around her made every motion ineffective, drawing attention instead to the precision of her calm and deliberate presence. The employees, sensing the change in dynamics, moved cautiously, their expressions a mixture of respect and incredulity, while residents leaned forward, captivated, some recording, others simply observing, their attention fixed on Avery as the orchestrator of the unfolding scene. Avery's hand hovered lightly near her tablet, poised but relaxed, signaling readiness and alignment with her assistant, who confirmed the ongoing engagement of all systems, reinforcing the anticipation that each subtle adjustment and command had already set in motion. The lobby, polished floors and reflective surfaces accentuating the tension, seemed to lean toward her, every observer aware that the situation had evolved far beyond a dispute over access, transforming into a clear display of control, influence, and strategic mastery. Whispered comments, exchanged glances, and the subtle tapping of phones all contributed to a collective acknowledgment that Avery's authority was absolute, her calculated patience and quiet assertiveness dictating the rhythm of the room without a single overt challenge. The anticipation built steadily, each heartbeat in the space synchronized with the silent but firm energy she projected, and as she prepared for the next phase, the collective gaze of the lobby remained fixed, understanding that Avery Morgan's quiet, deliberate actions were about to convert expectation into tangible demonstration of command, leaving no doubt that the environment, the systems, and every individual in the room had shifted under her measured and undeniable influence. Avery Morgan took a measured breath, her posture unchanging yet commanding. As the lobby seemed to pulse with anticipation, every resident, employee, and visitor aware that the moment had reached a critical point. Liam Carter's gestures grew increasingly tentative, his attempts to assert authority fading as the subtle responses of the building systems under Avery's command became undeniable. The soft clicks of doors, the gentle hum of operational panels, and the controlled flicker of lights reinforced the invisible power she wielded, turning ordinary infrastructure into instruments of authority. Employees who had initially tried to dominate now exchanged cautious glances, their movements deliberate and respectful, aware that the balance of power had shifted irreversibly. Avery's eyes swept across the room, noting raised phones, furrowed brows, and the small, instinctive adjustments people made in response to her presence, each detail reinforcing her understanding of influence and control without a word spoken. She allowed a brief pause, letting the tension stretch and settle, demonstrating patience and mastery over the space, converting silence into authority. Liam made a last feeble motion toward the elevator, his voice straining to regain control, yet Avery's composed stillness absorbed every effort, highlighting the contrast between assumed dominance and actual power. Residents leaned forward slightly, captivated by the demonstration of deliberate control, while the employees observed with a growing respect, recognizing that every subtle gesture, every breath, and every movement of Avery's had been calculated to assert influence without overt confrontation. The assistant's confirmation pinged softly in her earpiece, indicating that all systems were fully aligned and responsive, reinforcing the quiet but unmistakable command Avery had established over the environment. The lobby, with its reflective floors and polished surfaces, became a theater for precision and authority, each observer aware that the unfolding scenario was no longer a dispute but a demonstration of strategy, patience, and calculated influence. Avery's hand hovered lightly near her tablet, poised but relaxed, communicating readiness to act and complete control, while Liam's expression shifted from confidence to reluctant acknowledgment of the situation. The hum of the building and the subtle adjustments in lighting and access panels created a sense of inevitability, each person in the room aware that the next moments would confirm not just control of the elevator, but the demonstration of deliberate, earned authority that left no room for doubt. Avery's gaze, steady and unwavering, captured the attention of everyone present, emphasizing that leadership is a matter of calm, strategic presence, and that influence earned through observation, preparation, and silent command is far more potent than any overt assertion of power, leaving the entire lobby suspended in a moment of collective anticipation for the resolution of the carefully orchestrated scenario. Avery Morgan finally allowed herself a subtle, deliberate movement forward, each step measured and calm, drawing the attention of everyone in the lobby as though the space itself had shifted in response to her presence. Liam Carter's attempts at asserting control faltered completely, his hands gesturing uselessly toward the elevator panel while his expression betrayed disbelief, a growing understanding that he was no longer the orchestrator of the situation. The hum of the building systems under Avery's command remained constant, a quiet but powerful reinforcement of her authority, lights adjusting with subtle precision and doors responding instantly to the operational protocol she had activated. Employees who had previously attempted to dominate now moved carefully, their eyes fixed on Avery's controlled motions, their respect and uncertainty mirrored in each hesitant step. Residents whispered to each other, phones raised to capture the moment, murmuring about the calm command she exuded and the undeniable shift in influence that she had achieved. Avery's eyes scanned the room deliberately, noting every raised eyebrow, every small gesture of acknowledgment, and translating each into a precise understanding of the control she now held over the environment and everyone within it. Liam attempted one final gesture, pointing toward the elevator in a last-ditch effort to regain authority, yet Avery's serene presence and the building's immediate compliance rendered his motion irrelevant, highlighting the contrast between assumed power and genuine command. The subtle clicking of doors, the soft hum of access panels, and the gentle flicker of lights created a rhythm that reinforced Avery's dominance without a single raised voice, her calm energy dictating the flow of attention and reaction throughout the space. Avery's hand hovered lightly near her tablet, poised yet relaxed, signaling readiness while allowing the room to absorb the quiet assertion of her authority. The lobby, with its reflective floors and expansive glass walls, became a stage for the demonstration of strategic control, each resident, visitor, and employee recognizing that the unfolding scene was not merely about elevator access, but about a carefully measured display of influence, patience, and quiet leadership. The collective awareness of the room intensified as Avery's gaze met Liam's briefly, conveying understanding without confrontation, while employees and residents alike recognized that every action, subtle or overt, was guided by her deliberate control and mastery of the environment. Whispered conversations, the quiet tapping of phone screens, and shifting glances all contributed to an atmosphere charged with the anticipation of the next moment, each observer aware that Avery's measured movements and composed presence had already rewritten the balance of power. The subtle energy in the room, coupled with the precise response of the building systems, reinforced the undeniable authority she had established, leaving the lobby suspended in a state of collective focus and expectation, fully engaged in the unfolding demonstration of her strategic, silent, and absolute command. Avery Morgan allowed the space to settle for a brief heartbeat, the lobby now fully attentive, every movement, expression, and whisper contributing to the quiet recognition of her authority. Liam Carter's posture stiffened, the confidence that had once propelled him forward now replaced with hesitation and the faintest flicker of uncertainty, as employees who had attempted to dominate earlier moved more deliberately, their gazes fixed on Avery with respect and a growing awareness of the shift in power. The building's systems continued their silent support, doors adjusting seamlessly, lights responding with precision, and panels reflecting active operational changes that only underscored Avery's silent command, reinforcing the undeniable fact that control had shifted beyond challenge. Residents leaned slightly forward, phones capturing every detail, while others simply absorbed the unfolding scene, recognizing the deliberate orchestration of influence that had transformed a simple dispute into a masterclass of strategy, patience, and quiet authority. Avery's gaze swept the room, methodical and precise, reading reactions, microexpressions, and subtle movements, interpreting them into an understanding of influence and compliance that required no verbal assertion. Liam attempted one final gesture, a hesitant point toward the elevator panel, but Avery's composed stillness and the responsive systems rendered it inconsequential, highlighting the contrast between assumed dominance and real, earned authority. The hum of the infrastructure beneath the polished floors and the subtle flicker of lights added a rhythmic undertone to the scene, reinforcing her presence as the orchestrator of the lobby's flow and attention. Avery reflected briefly on her early career, moments where silent observation and careful patience had turned underestimated positions into strategic advantage, recognizing that the same principles now guided every interaction in the lobby. The employees, residents, and visitors became actors in a carefully observed demonstration of influence, each gesture, glance, and subtle shift contributing to a collective awareness that Avery's authority was both deliberate and absolute. Avery's hand hovered lightly near her tablet, poised but relaxed, signaling readiness and confirming alignment with her assistant, who had silently ensured that every system was engaged and responsive. The lobby's polished surfaces mirrored the tension and focus, amplifying the subtle signals that communicated Avery's command across the room. Whispers of awe and quiet exclamations flowed through the space, residents exchanging glances and employees adjusting posture as the realization settled that the dynamics had irrevocably changed. Avery's calm, yet commanding presence dictated the rhythm of the room, the anticipation now building toward a moment that would reveal the full scope of her influence, leaving the audience aware that each silent, deliberate action had brought the lobby to this pivotal point, preparing for the resolution that would confirm her absolute control and the unshakable authority she had quietly asserted from the very first step into the space. Avery Morgan stepped forward with measured confidence, the lobby now fully attuned to her presence, every eye fixed on her deliberate movements as the hum of the building systems provided a subtle but constant affirmation of her authority. Liam Carter, once brimming with confidence, now shifted uneasily, his gestures hesitant and ineffective as he recognized the full extent of Avery's control over the environment and every operational panel in the space. Employees who had earlier attempted to assert dominance now followed her gaze and posture, responding with cautious respect, their movements slower, deliberate, and mindful of the commanding influence she exuded without a single raised voice. Residents whispered among themselves, phones raised to capture the unfolding scene, their attention riveted on the demonstration of quiet strategy and measured authority that had transformed a simple access dispute into a powerful display of composure and control. Avery's eyes swept across the room, noting every subtle reaction, every small change in posture or expression, and translating them into an understanding of the collective awareness and acknowledgment of her influence. Liam made a final, uncertain gesture toward the elevator, but Avery's poised stillness, combined with the seamless response of the systems she had activated, rendered any attempt at regaining control irrelevant, emphasizing the difference between assumed authority and real, earned command. The soft clicks of doors, the gentle flicker of lights, and the rhythmic hum of panels created an atmosphere of silent affirmation, each sound underscoring Avery's mastery of the space. She allowed herself a brief pause, letting the room absorb the magnitude of her composure and strategic patience, demonstrating that true authority does not need to be shouted to be recognized. Her hand hovered lightly near her tablet, poised for any further action, signaling readiness while maintaining an aura of calm that dominated the room. The polished floors reflected the subtle movements, the glossy surfaces amplifying the sense that every element of the lobby was aligned with her command, from the employees to the residents to the very infrastructure of the building. Whispered observations and the soft tapping of phones filled the space, each capturing a moment of deliberate precision and quiet influence. Avery's gaze met Liam's briefly, conveying understanding without confrontation, a reminder that leadership is defined by composure, clarity, and calculated action rather than frantic assertion. The lobby remained suspended in a state of focused anticipation, every observer sensing that the scenario had reached its apex, and that Avery Morgan's deliberate, patient, and controlled approach had transformed the space into a clear testament of her unassailable authority, leaving no doubt in the minds of those present that the balance of power had irrevocably shifted and that the next moments would confirm the full scope of her strategic command.